Greetings, and welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us here on The Come Up, the Rise of the Entrepreneurs. My name is Rob McCray, and I am your host from the Business Building Network. And today you're going to be in store for a fabulous treat as we have a very special guest that's going to be speaking to us about different things that really affect a lot of the women here in our Black community. So we're going to be addressing some of those issues and stigmas that are placed upon our beautiful queens. So you definitely want to stay tuned and hear and participate and be a part of this dialogue, this conversation that we're going to be having. So just sit back, enjoy, and make sure that you are participating as well. So let me just share this out, and then we're going to be getting started very shortly. So family, as you're jumping on board, if you would, just leave us a comment. Let us know where you're checking in from. I would love to acknowledge you. Just give me a second. I'm going to share this out, and then we're going to get started in a few minutes. So I want to encourage you all to share this out as well, so everyone can participate and be a part of this wonderful discussion that we're going to have this evening here on The Come Up. So as you're jumping on board, just leave us a comment so we can acknowledge you and welcome you to The Come Up. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to The Come Up, episode number 17. Yes, we are definitely moving and grooving with this. So yes, as you're coming on board, please leave us a comment. Let us know where you're checking in from. I want to give you a shout out. Just need to share this out a couple of times, and we will be getting started very shortly. Good evening, family. Thank you for joining us. Got a family out there on the YouTube side coming over. So we are simulcasting here on Facebook and also on YouTube. So as you're coming on board, just leave us a comment so we can acknowledge you. All right. Okay. All right. So we got it all shared out. So let me see now. Okay. We're looking good, looking good. All right, we got my brother Marvell in the house. Good evening, brother. How are you, sir? Good to see you. Good to see you. We got the Wrath of Brath also joining us, checking in from Toronto, Canada. Thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay, we got Christina, my sis. Christina, how are you? Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Come Up. So, yes, like I said, family, this is going to be a very lively discussion that we're going to have here this evening, and we're going to be catering mostly to the women. This is going to be your chance for you to come out and address and speak about some of those issues that you may be going through within relationships and strongholds that may be going on within your lives. So we have our very special guest, who is none other than Dr. Val Bernard Allan. And she is all the way from the UK over there in London, England. So yes, we have gone international. The Come Up has definitely gone international. So she's going to be coming out and, sharing her expertise and giving us some great tips and advice on how to overcome some of these strongholds. So before we bring her out, I just want to tell you a little bit about her. So she is born and raised in the United Kingdom of London, England. And that is where she currently resides as well. She is happily married with 2 children. She attended the University College of London, where she got her degree in sociology, and she also got her master's from Open University, which is also located in London, England. She lectures at Dauphine University, which is also in London, and she also lectures at Activate Learning in Berkshire, and that is right outside of London. So she has been doing her business for the last 2 years. She is also an author and a motivational speaker that loves to empower Black women. So without further ado, if you will, get your emoji claps ready and help me welcome our guest for this evening, Dr. Val Bernard Allan. Dr. Allan, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very happy to be here.
We are glad to have you. Thank you for joining us here on the Come Up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So if you will, just if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business that you're involved with.
Right. Well, thank you for your introduction. Yep, I was born and raised in the UK, and I've been thinking about some of the sort of significant journeys I've had in terms of that's connected with the work that I'm doing now. And I can think of 2 experiences or two I don't know, factors, both of them related to my parents. My father used to tell me, so every other night, because he would tell bedtime stories every other night, sharing it with my mom, but he would always end his stories and say, "You are royalty."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when you're a 3-year-old little girl, 4-year-old, those words really sink deep into your soul. And he would end his stories and say, "You are royalty, and the Queen and her children are not better than you. You're royalty," right? Except he would say, "Uno is royalty," right? And then with my mother always says, she continued because my father's passed now, my mother always quotes this text from the scripture where she says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." And these messages, I think, collapse together and inform the work that I do. It's really interesting, just reflecting on it. The work that I do with my community and with Black women specifically, because my work is about transformation. My work is about inserting this idea deep into our subconsciouses that we are royalty, despite what the media might be saying or our circumstances, that is our core. So, yeah, I think that really has informed this work that has really sort of covered the specifically the issue of Black women and singleness. So that's what my PhD research is on.
Okay.
So,
all right.
All right.
All right. So before we get into that, let's journey back a little bit. We want to know a little bit about you and your upbringing. So tell us where you were born and raised, and how was that like for you as a young child coming up in London, England?
Right. So, yeah, I was raised in London, and that's why I told those stories, because when I went to school, and some of the challenges of being a Black child in a school with a majority white kids, I would carry that message with me every day. So when I face difficult circumstances, I would say that to myself. I'd say I am royalty, right? And it would always give me the confidence to bounce back, or not to even be touched by what was going on.
Right.
So, and then with this idea, as I got older and I began to understand this thing that my mom used to always repeat, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, it was like she was just reminding me, or she reminds me, that it is always possible to grow. So these messages motivated me at school, at university. I went through lots of horrendous experiences where I felt the pressure. There was like a wall in front of me that was pressing against me to not to succeed in so many different ways. And these messages helped me to push back and to push through.
Okay.
But the work that I do now is to really to try and get women not to push unnecessary walls, because sometimes we're pushing, but that's not the wall that we're meant to be pushing against, because the wall is going to stay there. It's best to sort of be strategic and to use our energies to run, rather than always be pushing and pressing against an arena that has set up to make life difficult for you. So I learned to navigate myself through the academic institutions that I found myself in, and to succeed, and to sometimes know when to retreat and when to win, when to realize I should go into battle and when I should retreat. And this has helped me in the world of work as well. And in terms of my interest in single women, I was married some time ago, and I got divorced, and then I remarried. So I went through quite an interesting journey around singleness and marriage and remarriage. But I've always, since probably about 18, 19, been interested in this issue about Black women and singleness. I started to become aware of it. So I had my experience of it, and my experience out of singleness, as well as the PhD research. So I bring all of these experiences together to work with women.
All right, so let me ask you this, Dr. Val. So do you see it as a major problem, especially within the Black community, that there are a lot of single Black women?
I do see it as a problem, primarily because most, not all, but most single Black women do not want to be in that situation. So I refer to involuntary singleness. So it's a problem on a personal level, but it's also a problem on a community level, because you cannot really have a productive community if you have that community filled with women who are involuntary single and not engaging in their masculine counterparts to build families, to build communities, to build businesses. So yeah, so for me, on a sociological level, it's very important. Absolutely.
All right. So would you say these behavior patterns, would you say they're more strongholds, or they're internal fighting amongst women and men as well? or are these just something that have been passed down from generation to generation?
All three. I would say that they're all three. But as a sociologist, I understand it to be, we talk about history,
Yes.
and I find it interesting that people don't really want to talk about history when it's got to do with the narrative of slavery. A lot of people say, oh, that's in the past, don't talk about it. But yet still we are taught history, and we're taught history from a Western point of view. We're taught history over here in England. We're taught history to really celebrate English culture and English victory and Great Britain and, all of those sort of narratives of power, etc. But when the Black communities say, well, we want to understand what happened in slavery, Black and non-Black people, the cry seems to be the same for many, which is, oh, forget about that. That's in the past. So for me, when I did my research on single women, narratives began to emerge in the analysis that led me back to slavery.
Okay, such as?
So the idea of a strong Black woman. So when I asked the women to describe themselves, many of them said, I'm a strong Black woman. Mm-hmm. And it's a term that we hear over and over again. But for sociologists, consistent narratives are very interesting. Say, well, why are they saying that? Where did that come from? And you can ask people individually, and they will tell you their own interpretation, or you do the research and find out where those narratives came from. And strength has always been in the African woman, but the kind of strength that she had to generate in order to survive slavery and post-slavery was almost superhuman. But it's a strength that we celebrate and we normalize. Certainly in the Caribbean community, I'm of Caribbean extraction, that strength is normalized. But it came about as an attempt to help women to navigate the trauma of enslavement. So mothers would say to their daughters, knowing that their daughters may be raped, may be taken away, and all of that, work so hard until they die, they would have to say to them, you have to be strong. And it became a competence that was passed on to women. And so generations of women have passed on this narrative of strength. So when you understand how it serves a function, it's a very important function for Black societies. When you have groups of women who are strong, what that does, it generates a counter narrative, which is that Black men are weak. And when you place it back to enslavement, that actually helps to support slavetocracy or the plantation. When you have a strong woman and a weak man, it means that the slave owner is able to maintain power. So that's just like one.
That's deep. Yeah. All right, so going back to what you just said now. All right, so the Black women has always been talked about as being a strong figure in the household and in the community, because she had to endure so much. She had to take on the responsibilities because a lot of the times the Black man is not within the household. So the Black woman was responsible for raising the children, going out to work and doing everything and trying to play that role as the father as well, because the father was absent within the child's life. So what I have seen, and I think that this is what you're stating as well, is that when women talk about themselves in a strong presence, they're kind of alienating themselves because they feel like they have their own independence and they have to rely upon themselves. So in a way, they're kind of pushing the man out because they I don't want to say that they have this persona that they don't need a Black man, but it come across that way.
Yeah, so it may come across that way, but see, so I don't speak on a psychological level. too much because I feel that the psychological interpretation is very important, but there are many people speaking at that level. I tend to speak on a level that helps us to understand why those arrangements were established in the first place and why it is we haven't done the work of debunking those arrangements, post-enslavement. All right. So the as I said, the strong Black woman was there to ensure that the plantation system continued. So she had to be strong in order to manage all these different children from different men. She was a breeding machine in enslavement. So the only way to cope with that kind of situation was to be strong. Her children would be taken. Some of them would be killed. She would have children of all different colors and, from different when I say sort of tribal groups, as well as the white master, so all of this was happening to her. If she loved a man, that would create its own anxieties, because the chances are that he would be taken from her, especially if the master knew she loved him, because any sort of connections would be disconnected, because they had to keep that system going and use fear and anxiety. So when you're a slave woman, what you do, you pass that on to your children, because that's what socialization is about. Socialization is how we teach the next generation how to survive in the current society. All right. So we make them social depending on the context. So parents would pass that on to their children. Right. So after enslavement, those modes of socialization continued. There wasn't any work. Somebody's asking a question. There wasn't any work that was done to bring about a healing, so that it was just passed on automatically. And coupled with that, there was post-enslavement was racism, and poverty.
Right.
Yeah, and the increasing incarceration rates of Black men. So there were the arrangements in slavery come right through to 2020. They're just wearing slightly different clothes.
That's it.
Yeah, and we're still in the plantation. We're more sophisticated now, and but the gaps, the racial gaps, as well as the gender gaps within the Black community have remained more or less the same. And because of that, it serves white privilege, white economic privilege, because we don't actually, it's divide and conquer. We don't actually come together. So you've got, the Black man who's unavailable for a variety of reasons, through enslavement, unemployment, or whatever. The Black man has always been unavailable because he could not control his family, because he wasn't allowed to. And if he did, one of the things I find interesting is that when Black men stood up, then Black women would plead with them to be weak, because by their men being weak, their men would survive. And so Black women are socialized to police their partners. So that's passed on as well, the policing of Black men by Black women. But these are acts of survival that were relevant for a time, but we don't, well, to some extent we still need it, but as a community. So there's terrible things going on, as we know.
Absolutely.
But there's more opportunities for building and coming together, like this conversation that we're having, and saying, what is the function of this behavior? Shall we use our energies in our gendered relationships to build rather than to police each other?
Amen.
Yeah. So somebody's asked a question. I saw a question.
Yeah, let's address that question and bring that up for you before we move on. So she was asking, this is Sister Christina, what's the difference between sociologists and psychologists and a sociologist? Right. So in the psychologist, we say the unit, every subject has a unit of analysis. It has a paradigm or factors or features that it focuses on, right? So in psychology, the focus is on the mind and how people relate
to each other, you know, and it's very individualistic. All right. So it focuses on the mind, it focuses on how people think and feel and their behaviors, right? But as individuals. So the unit of analysis is the individual in psychology. In sociology, the unit of analysis is the group.
Okay.
All right. So whereas the psychologists would focus on the individual body and what's going on for that individual in the context of society, the sociologists, the smallest unit they will focus on is the group. So they will look at groups, they will look at large groups, they'll look at nations, they'll look at the world. So they look at the social body and they look at all the interconnections that take place to make up a society. So whereas a psychologist would say, how does that mind work? The sociologist will ask, how does that society work?
Okay. All right. All right. So Christine has one more question. Let me pull that up real quick. So what are some examples of policing and a relationship between Black men and women?
Okay. So, see, that's okay. So for example, if a man you're not sure where he's going, you know, if you're in a relationship and the man is out and you're not too sure where he is, anxieties that he might be picked up with by the police, anxieties that he might be with another woman, anxieties that he may be having problems with work, and then the way that the woman responds when the man returns, sort of like presenting that anxiety to the man. So, you know, questions of suspicion, etc. Right. Struggling to trust the man, and it's not just the man, it's the woman's acknowledgement that the society that he operates within is not for him. Absolutely. And so she's trying to sort of protect, guide his relationships with others so he stays employed, so he doesn't get in trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, and it starts with boys. When you have boys, you start to police your boys when they get tall. You know, when you go into a shop, you walk like this, you do like that. You know, in before they would say, don't look at a white woman, don't look anybody in the eye. So all these policing advice that mothers would pass on to their sons, and then that would be part of their relationship with their partners as well.
Okay.
And that used to happen, as I said before, because women were scared that if they didn't police their partners and encourage their partners to be weak and subservient, that they would lose them.
Yeah.
So it comes from fear.
I get it. Yeah. I get it. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because my sister here, Miss Creative Hands, she had a live discussion yesterday talking about independence for women and, you know, some of the struggles that they go through as far as, you know, men trying to call the shots and run the whole deal. So that was a very good discussion that they had yesterday. It was very interesting. So Miss Creative Hands, by all means, Nika, you know, post up some comments and some questions because I'm sure that you have some. Paulette, my sister, good evening. How are you? Thank you for joining us. All right, so Dr. Val, let me ask you this. So through your research, so how are you able to address some of these issues that women are going through? My brother Triumphant, good evening, sir. How are you?
Well, I'll tell you some of my findings. I think if I take it through that way.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are 4 main findings. And then those main findings illuminate some what I call novel findings. So I'll tell you the 4 main findings. One of them is that marriage is centralized. All right. So what the women in my studies tended to do when they talked about being single, they centralized marriage. Marriage was the identity that they wanted to achieve, or long-term relationship. All right. So you're asking them, how do you feel about being single? And they talk about being married. They talk about wanting to marry. All right. So they're not grounded within their single identity. The other thing is, as a result of that, their single identity is therefore problematic. They don't sit comfortably within their single identity. And when you look at society and the way that society emphasizes coupling, it's pretty fantastic that where that's a consistent narrative, that if you're an adult, society expects you to be in a coupled relationship. Whether or not you are is another matter, but that expectation, if you're a productive adult, you should be coupled. Okay, so because of that, their singleness is problematic. They want to be married. Now, the women that I studied were Christian women, and what they generated was a narrative about celibacy. So nearly all the women that I interviewed, or they took part in my research, talked about the difficulties of being celibate, because in religious communities, being single means being celibate. All right. Yes. So obviously not everybody is, but that is the identity that everybody's working towards. Right. And celibacy becomes the identity in which they can gain some sort of power. All right. So because in a religious institution, if you're celibate, it means that you're virtuous. All right. So it's something that they strive for. However, they then find being celibate extremely problematic, because as you get older, to be celibate begins to take on a very negative, you take on a negative, what I refer to it as a negatively hyper-visible identity. Like you're an older woman. Some of the women I interviewed never had sex, and they're like 45, 50. They've never engaged in sexual relations. It's complete, don't have no idea what that's about. All right. And they carry that identity in a very uncomfortable way. Interestingly though, I came across studies that suggest that Black women who are not in religious spaces are also celibate. That celibacy, involuntary celibate, that Black women have this was in a research in Canada, had the lowest rates of sexual engagement than any other ethnic group. All right. Wow. So celibacy is, despite what the media is saying and whatever, the amount of times that Black women are sexually engaged is relatively limited compared to other ethnic groups. So celibacy is part of, if the research is correct, and if my research is correct, it's an identity that is connected to Blackness, Black women. All right. And then the other thing was, they then, in order to manage this difficult terrain, they became hyper spiritual. Spirituality became something that they reached for. Celibacy was a route towards spirituality. So, we have these sort of caricatures of older Black women who are hyper spiritual. They are asexual. Do you see what I mean? Yes. Like the old films with the big mammy, she wasn't a really sexual figure. So we have all of these narratives about Black women as well that sit comfortably within religious communities. But then some of the novel findings that came through those discussions, or through those 4 key findings, was the strong Black woman. Mm-hmm. So, like if you're managing celibacy, for example, you got all the other stuff that's come through enslavement. Now you're managing celibacy. You're reaching towards spirituality. Then you're generating a hyper strong identity. So we have the strong Black woman. We have pigmentocracy. We have, notions of colorism and, that whole shadism and all of that came through, and how different shades were seen as more feminine, and they felt, the way that they couldn't position themselves in the field. So their narratives opened up a field. It's like a football field. And the theory that I used to analyze it, it's a sociologist called Bourdieu, and he talks about a field, and it's like you're playing football. There's a game and there are rules, and so there's a market field of relationships. There's a market field of relationships, and when you get into this field to play the game, then if you don't represent what is seen as the idealized identity, you will be losing in that field. You can't compete equally. So that's why, you know, this thing about singleness is linked with issues of social justice, because Black women are not able to compete fully, all right, especially when you have other ethnic groups coming into that field. So they talk about pigmentocracy, they talk about strong Black woman, and they present men, Black men in the field, as their discriminators. So the narratives that we have, say, for example, under Black Lives Matter, where we talk about white privilege and whatever, they generate those narratives around Black men. They say that they discriminate against us, and because they are not choosing us. And, you know, so they bring a new, so these are some of the novel findings: Black men as discriminators, and then another narrative, I refer to it as anomic masculinities. Black men who do not settle down are seen as problematic. They're criminalized, they are seen as worthless or whatever. So they generate a very negative narrative towards Black men who do not take up their responsibilities and choose them, and choose a woman to marry in that field, that market field of relationships. So these are some of the findings, and these findings, when I considered them, began to point me in a very important direction, which I suppose you're going to be asking me about.
Okay. All right. So these are just different measures used to create division.
Yeah, you could say they were set up. These arrangements, these social arrangements, are now ingrained within Black culture, and ingrained in a way that they're not really being questioned. Obviously, some people are questioning them, but the everyday, you know, in our relationships every day, we're not questioning these arrangements and saying, why do we do this? So, like, for example, I had one of my white English friends sort of challenging me, and she said, I don't know why Black people talk about, you know, discrimination and whatever, where it's blatantly obvious to white people that Black people discriminate against each other. All right. And she was like, so what have you got to say about that?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Whilst I was drinking tea in her tea and biscuits, she just threw that at me. But yeah, I explained to her that discrimination within the Black community is linked with survival. So colorism, for example, is a way in which the Black community tried to survive. If a woman had a child with a white man, the chances are that that child would live. So what a woman would do, she would take the risk of attaching herself to the child that she has with the white man. Doesn't mean she didn't love the Black children, but it meant that there were anxieties that they would be taken. So she couldn't connect with them in the same way. So she connected with the child that might live. All right. So that's what, and it's just been passed on. So lighter skinned was associated with life, with opportunity. Okay. Whereas darker skinned was associated with death and poverty and insecurity. So you can imagine a mother having to sort of navigate her you know, she's trying to survive a traumatic experience. She's having to, her mind is having to engage in very difficult gymnastics in order to cope. So it doesn't mean she didn't love those children. So then, you know, that narrative was passed on from generation to generation. So we have that now, but we don't understand why we have it. We don't understand its function, and we don't understand that we don't need it anymore. It's no longer a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
All right. So you can see how history.
Pull back the layers.
Hmm?
So you got to pull back the layers, see what's really going on.
Yeah. So why do we do this, and how does this help us to remain broken? What is asexual?
Yes.
Right. asexual means without, devoid of sexual energy, unattractive, hyper spiritual. When a woman or a man comes over, like, so some people actually have asexual identities where they have no sexual drive. There's a community now of asexual people. But the way that Black women were presented, if you look at those old Tom and Jerry films, for example, she's big, she's just there working, that whole thing about her. She's just there. She's very mammified. She's a mother to everybody, but she's not seen as a sexual, sensitive, emotional being, right? And a lot of that happens to Black women. There are lots of arrangements that we have in Black culture that encourage that kind of narrative.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you, Dr. Val, do you have any type of workshops to deal with these issues?
Yeah, I do. So I'll go on to the workshops. But what I've moved to now, having analysed the thing around singleness and Black women and Black societies in general, I've moved towards trying to solve the problem. All right. And, I'm reminded of this guy, Edward de Bono, who says a solution is often outside the box, which, that people have been looking at the problem of Black women and singleness, but individually, how do I get a bloke? What do I need to do? What do I need to do to find a partner? And if I find a partner, I'm all right. All right. So what I try to do is to generate a collective interest in this subject for the community to understand the importance of Black on Black love, right? For the children, it's about leaving a legacy, because it's important to say to children, you are valuable. And the way that we tell children they are valuable is when we value each other.
Absolutely.
All right. And that's how they know also, and they won't be shooting and whatever, they just learn within our community that we value each other, the men and the women, that we've broken those strongholds. So my work now is about saying to Black women, it matters that you are single. It matters to God that you are involuntary single, and there is a solution to it. Okay. I say, so let's do something about it. So my workshops are about exposing those sociological, historical arrangements. And by doing that, I position Black single women in a different space. So I take that negative focus, like you have failed, away, or our discussions begin to take that narrative away that you have failed. It's more that something happened to us. All right. And your singleness or our singleness is symptomatic of that something that happened. When you do that, you take the stress away from single, they start to feel, well, maybe there's hope. It's not that I'm not good looking. It's not that, because they say, oh, I don't look right. I'm the wrong shade. I haven't got the right this, blah, blah. So you take that away and say, no, it's not about that primarily. Fundamentally, something happened. There's a brokenness in our community, and it's up to us to come together and to heal that brokenness. All right. So that's the first thing that I emphasize. And then I move on and talk about strongholds. And I show how, those historical arrangements continue today and the function that they have in contemporary society. Mm-hmm. And from there, the women then begin to work through with myself how it is that they can be empowered to break those strongholds. All right. So that's the kind of work. When you understand how a society comes together, all societies hang together. I mean, if you ask yourself the question, why does America continue year in, year out? Why do we have this identity, this sort of national identity, American? Where does it come from? How did it start? How is it sustained? All right. And basically, it's because of an idea. It's through thought, it's through speech, and it's through action. And these are the basic seeds of a culture: thought, speech, and action. So if you understand that, and then you're looking at your own community and you say, what kinds of thoughts, what kind of speech, and what kind of actions do we need to engage in to build? And one of the things that I do is to try to shift people from sort of this obsession with sort of integration, sort of like, especially in this country, there's a lot of our social action is towards integration. There are things that we have to do to survive, but we need to use a lot of our energies towards building, a bit like what people did in Tulsa. All right, you heard of Tulsa, where they came together, and the Black Wall Street.
Black Wall Street, yes.
The Black Wall Street. Their social behavior was towards each other, and that's why they were able to. So their thoughts, their speech, and their actions were towards each other. It wasn't going in the other direction, trying to integrate. It was about coming together, and they did something amazing as a result. And all societies operate in that way. So that's the kind of thing that I try to show, in my work. And that begins to empower the women to participate in what I call a thought, speech, and action revolution, to be bringing, marriage back into our community. And I know that some people are thinking, well, how does that work? But maybe you've got another question for me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So what is it? A daily course of action that you have them to take, or how does that work?
When you talk about strongholds, you have to be then generating a narrative around spirituality. One of the things that we have lost in our community because of the power of science and rationality, our natural spiritual competencies have been neutralized. So my work in terms of solution is about regenerating and reconnecting with those spiritual competencies. And there are sciences now that demonstrate, science talks about frequencies, and how frequencies, if somebody sings very high, a glass can break. Yes. Yeah. So there's a relationship between the human being and the outside world, right? There is a direct causal relationship, and it's not just in terms of physical, like a high-pitched voice and the glass breaks, but there are other causal relationships that we've lost that memory in the trauma, and some of that memory is hinted at within Christianity. But it's about really understanding how those spiritual causal laws work. So that is so we use sociology to unpick society, critique society, see what is going on, have the bird's eye view, and then we say, right, we're going to do it differently now in light of that. And what resource do we have? And my research shows that women, they cling on to spirituality. And that's the hint. That was the hint. That was an actual hint for me, therein lies the solution. But they use spirituality to cope and to maintain their singleness. I say to women, use your spirituality to gain more spirituality, to help us build community by marrying. So I say it matters to us, all of us, that you are single, and all of us need to help you to do something about it.
Okay. All right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your book, which really addresses those issues, singleness. So let me just bring it up on the screen real quick. And Dr. Allan, if you would give us the name of your book.
It's called The 7 Habits for Black Women Who Want to Marry.
All right, so tell us about that.
Well, it's as I've just explained to you. I mean, this book, it's a self-help book, which combines sociology, Black-centric knowledge with spirituality. Okay. So it's sociology, spirituality, and Black centricity. They all come together. And I I won't be going through the habits, but I'll say that the habits are based on what we think, what we say, and what we do. All right. So if I can give you an instance, I shared this the other day. One of the things that we do as women, we are told to do well to support ourselves. All right. My mom used to say to me, no man is going to mind you. Right. So get your education, do this, get your job, blah, blah, blah. And that's, many Black women are socialized in that way. You will not be protected by a man, so make sure you can protect yourself. All right. And so in the very early years. And so the Black woman's position and the decision she makes is away from the man, even though in her heart she may want to be in that situation, but it's in order for self-protection. But one of the downsides of that kind of insistence, because it's got positives to it, but one of the downsides is that the mother or parents speak into the future of their child. Yes. And parents have a power. They have an amazing power over the trajectory of their children's lives, even the very names that they give their children, right? So every time mothers spoke that into their daughters' lives, they created a covenant for their daughters, right? So, and then when it happens, everybody says, see, I told you, no one was going to look after you. That's why you got an education. But it was because it was actually spoken into their lives. And then you get this multiplying, loads of Black women having that experience. And then it's just normalized. It's just normalized. And then there's a negative narrative.
And then they pass it on to their children as well.
Pardon? They pass that on to the children.
Yes, yes. And the cycle just keeps repeating itself.
And then the other one is that Black men are worthless. Yes. All right. And your dad, your father is hopeless, and your father has let me down, and and it doesn't mean that people don't have real experiences. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the function of that narrative in the spiritual world. Yes. And the slave master, planted the seed of separation, and then we continue to fuel it and to give it spiritual power in our lives. All right. And so our men end up being incarcerated because of a racist system. All right. A racist system that has covenanted and has a vested interest that they are incarcerated. And we, through our language, we almost push them into those. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. In sociology, we call it self-fulfilling prophecy. They actually have that term in the labeling theory in sociology, the way that labels, when you give labels to children, research has shown that those children take on those labels. All right. The psychologists have done
embedded into them. Yeah.
Yeah. But and over and above that, these are the causal relationships that these are spiritual causal relationships. So sound, if sound can break a glass, do you see what I mean? It's to understand the power of sound and the intentionality behind sound. And that's why the Bible talks about death and life is in the power of the tongue.
Oh, you best believe. You best believe. Yeah, yeah.
So it's that kind of unpacking that we do, and people have to commit to new conversations. Yes. Do you see what I mean? Just to generate and to break those strongholds through the resources that so it's about empowering women and saying, this is what you have in your hand. You can talk about systemic racism, this, that, but what do you have in your hand? So that's the focus of it. Yeah. You're not a victim. All right. What have you got in your hand, and how do you use this intentionally with your family, with the boys in your life, with the man in your life, with your brothers? It's quite a lot of work to be done with brothers. All right. Because there's our relationship with our brothers and how that impacts our relationship with men, and how the frequencies that are around us in relation to our men. And obviously there's loads of work that needs to be done with men as well. So I'm not picking on this, not picking on the sisters at all. It's just, this is the emphasis of my work.
Yes, yes. All right, so going back to something that you said now, dealing with the strongholds and the different stigmas that are attached specifically to the Black woman. And she's always viewed and looked upon as being angry. So if you would address that.
Yeah, that sort of rage. It's interesting because they Richard Majors, I think he's an American psychologist, says that all Black men have rage. You know, they manifest it differently, but Black women are seen as angry. That is a really negative stereotype.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's obviously, it met the function of slavery as well, you know, for the Black woman to be seen as, you know, sort of even against her own people, because she's angry with her own people, right? But if you were to think about the level of fear that the Black woman was living through, you know, she was hyper, you know, you talk about flight or fright, fight, fright, and flight. You know what I mean? So she was constantly in that situation, having to bring up children. Her body was, you know, available for her master. You know, there was no boundaries around her. All right. So she had to find a way to protect herself and to protect her children, and rage and anxiety became one of the ways that she would do it. And sometimes, you know, the slave master would just beat women or beat the men for no other, in case they do something next week.
Right.
And then the Black mothers would just beat their children. Their children would be playing and they would beat their children in case they do something next week. Right. And it was a way of controlling and making sure that the children were safe. So generating this thing of, you know, being angry, operating from a position of rage. It was a war, wasn't it? It's like a Holocaust, really. And if that is passed on, you know, you feel alone, there isn't any man to look after you, no man go and mind you, as my mom used to say. You know, no one's there to look after you. You know, that anger it's just too much, isn't it? Yeah. I remember going into London and, you know, I was in Brixton, and Brixton is sort of like a typical, or was before they gentrified it, a typical sort of Black Caribbean area. And I remember standing at a bus stop and then watching the buses on the other side of the road. And I could see Black women on the buses, you know, sitting upstairs, and all of them looked so sad, resigned and angry. I just felt so, it was just a very powerful moment. And I just looked at these women and I thought, what are they going through? You know, what are they going through? So it's not to say that life is easy for them. And to get a woman to, you know, it's about the vulnerability that she needs to connect with as well. And sometimes women find it very difficult to connect with that vulnerability, even though they may love a man, they find it very difficult. So there's quite a lot of work to be done there. And you can do the psychological work, but you can also do the spiritual work to break that. Because once you understand its function to keep you separate and apart from a man, because if you've got an angry, raging Black woman, what it does in society is to illuminate and what can I say, idealize another identity. Because when you have one identity, what it does, it sheds light on another identity. And the counter opposite to an angry Black woman is a very soft white woman. So it serves that function.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So what are you looking to accomplish through your research and your studies? What are you looking to do for the Black women?
I want the Black women to participate in a movement of transforming legacies.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Transforming legacies. So that's about building on the positives of the past and understanding what's going on now, to achieve marriage. And to, you know, we talk about Black Lives Matter. I say Black Love Matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. And it's to build the confidence. So we come together and we work on generating that emotional and social capital to begin normalizing Black love and give them the confidence to receive Black men into their lives.
Yes, absolutely. We
So
need more of that.
that's the work that I do.
Instead of, you know, pushing each other away, we have to embrace one another. You know, work together as one. You know, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about your workshops. I understand that you're going to be doing one specifically for the people here in the United States. So tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So I'm going to do a workshop called Black Women and Singleness, Breaking Strongholds.
Okay.
So that's where I really go into the whole sociology of society and Black culture. And then I start identifying the strongholds. So that's, you know, that's what it's about. It's about identification of the strongholds so that we can begin breaking them. And I do have a follow-up one, another seminar that I will follow up with a bit later on. But the first thing that this seminar will do is really show the strongholds and be able to map the startings and how it moves on from generation after generation and its role in society. So it's a bit of an intellectual tour around post-enslavement, enslavement and post-enslavement to contemporary times, so we can see the genders and where they are now, and to see the strongholds around them. And then the encouragement is that we need to begin to break them, and we begin to look at some of the ways in which they can be broken. Right. So that it's a session for about an hour and a half. And okay. I'm hoping to do it in August. I have in my head the 27th of August. I'm just looking at the dates at the moment. And it will be one evening. Yeah, an evening. The 20th, I think that's a Thursday evening. All right. Okay. So I'll be promoting that.
All right. So I'm leaving your email address in the comment section here on Facebook and also on YouTube. So guys, if you want to connect with Dr. Val and get more information on this this workshop that she's going to be doing, by all means, reach out to her. Her links to her website and also to purchase her books is also in the comment section. So guys, just let me know if you see it in the comment section, and if not, then we will share it out by another means to make sure that you are getting this information. So just let me know if you see her email address and the link to her website, and to also purchase the book. Okay.
And I just talked about the program. There's a 4-month program that I offer as well.
Okay.
Which is, it takes the women through thought, speech, and action. All right. So it's there. These are half-day sessions. But I mean, I'm running one which begins on Sunday. And it's probably too late for people to join. But if anybody wants to find out about the 4-month program, where you have one session per month, and then you have 4 weeks to practice the activities, then another session, so on, then you can email me. All right, if you're interested in the 4-month program, and maybe you will be once I've done the one in August. But you're feel free to email me and communicate with me. So that you have my email there, don't you, Rob?
Yeah, state it so they can, in case they don't see it in the comment section, just state your email address, please.
It's Val Bernard Allan. I'll just gmail.com. Yeah, gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Val Bernard Allan at gmail.com. That's her email address.
Yeah.
So the Wrath of Wrath says they see the web address and also the email over on the YouTube side. Thank you for that. So my Facebook family, if you will let me know if you see the comments over there as well. Okay, all right, good. All right, so Dr. Val, let me ask you, so do you practice prayer and meditation?
I do. Absolutely daily. I do that. Oh wow, don't know where I would be if I didn't do that. The world is operating in a completely different I don't know, zone, and you need downtime to sort of connect and to reposition yourself, and to really connect with what your assignment is in life. You know, like why am I on the planet? You know, why am I here? What's the purpose? If you haven't got a purpose, then you need to find your purpose. Everybody has a purpose. There's a reason why we're here. And I think the beauty of life is to discover that, you know, like Alice in Wonderland.
Right.
Or Diana Ross on the Yellow Brick Road. You know, we have to find our assignment. And that happens when you're still, you know, be still and know. That happens when you're still. So yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's how I was brought up. But I found it to be a very powerful connection with my creator.
There you go.
Yeah.
So tell me, who are some people that have inspired you?
Well, my mum. My mother most definitely. Both of my parents, but my mother most definitely. She continues to be an inspiration. She's very inspiring. She's she's such a giver. She's done some amazing things in her life. Absolutely amazing. She won many awards for the work that she does for communities, helped to set up schools in different parts of Africa. She's, you know, very, 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 very active.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I just sort of, sometimes I look at her and I think, is she really my mum? You know, and because she's just such a positive, interesting force against the odds, you know, against the odds.
Yes.
And she just, when we were kids growing up and she used to cook, we'd go outside and be playing with the kids outside. I'm sure we've all got these stories, but she would look out and count how many kids out there and then cook for everybody, you know. And I would always be upset because I'd want all the food, but she would cook for everyone, and it really did teach me something about giving. And she would say to us when we complained, she would say, "You three came from my belly, but the others are my children too."
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's quite inspiring to hear that as a child.
Yeah.
So most definitely my mother. I mean, I could talk about, you know, people that I don't really know that I've seen on telly. But it's really, I think that would be the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great inspiration to have right there. Yeah. That's like moms, you know, paving the way.
Yeah.
You know, all your mistakes. Yeah.
And then I can say that the other inspiration is my husband. He's most definitely.
Okay.
You know, he's a very inspiring force for me. And interestingly enough, my husband and I have two jobs, but in one of my jobs, I work with my husband and we're in the same team.
Oh, really?
So we actually, we work together as well. I didn't meet him at work, but we ended up working for the same organization. So he's there, very supportive, egging me on. He's just sitting right there now as I'm talking.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta have a team working together.
That is it. Absolutely. Do it for the children.
There you go.
Do it for the children. Let them see that. And let it just be normal. Let it just be normal.
All right. So now you live over on the other side of the pond over there. So I'm going to ask you, how has the pandemic affected you guys over there, and how has it affected your business? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, because I'm a lecturer, so most of my work is online, teaching online. So I've had to come to terms with looking into a screen and I think you will find that it's quite difficult for me. I tend to look up and look around, you know. So I have to communicate that way. So that's, you know, taking some used to, but I'm getting used to it.
Okay.
I actually enjoy being in my house.
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoy being at home in my house, doing my work. I'm in my office. I have everything here. It's fine. Yeah. In terms of the business, it means that I can have a conversation with you. Yeah. Overseas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody that I don't know,
Right.
you know, I definitely think it's a powerful way to connect, you know, those sort of, for me, you know, the fact that African Canadian women struggle with singleness, African Caribbean women struggle with it, African American, you know, it's a real opportunity to bring those consistent narratives together and to
Mm-hmm.
have a global conversation about
Right.
what's going on.
Right.
So yeah, that part of it I enjoy, as well as you know, drawing knowledge and experiences from, you know, my friends and the people I'm connecting with on the African continent. Yeah, it's very, very positive.
Yeah.
Very positive.
So it's helped you reach a broader audience.
Yeah, just beginning to, because I've done a few seminars since lockdown, but I've been mostly lecturing. I only just started my leave now, so I'm hoping to crank up now and do more.
So are you guys on lockdown?
Yeah, we are
You
on
okay. Okay.
we're on we're on lockdown still, but we can, you know, you can go to the shops.
Uh,
It's as from tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Next week, you are required to wear a mask.
oh yeah, y'all haven't been required to wear a mask as of yet?
Not really, no.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
What would you say? That's about it, isn't it? Yeah. You have to wear them in shops as from next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big debate over here now. The scientists, they're trying to tell us that we need to be wearing the mask, but our president,
Yeah.
he's against that, and he's contradicting the message. So it's kind of the tug of war going on over here.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure you've seen the results, so it's not good. It's not pretty at
No,
all.
no, it's not.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting that you guys haven't been wearing the mask, and your numbers are nowhere near what we've been experiencing over here.
Yeah, they're not as near, but what about this percentage though, Marvin?
Yeah, it's very high.
In America, it's like
Ours is the highest in Europe.
yeah, we have the highest in Europe.
Oh, really?
England has the highest in Europe, yeah.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
yeah, we have the highest in Europe. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's not good at all. And then coupled with that is the labeling of Black people as the ones that are more likely to get coronavirus. That is just like rampant at the moment.
Yes,
You
very
know,
much
so
so.
that's quite interesting how that coincides with Black Lives Matter for me.
Hmm.
You know, so that's going on as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me ask you. So where do you see yourself in your business within the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you want to be?
I would like to be working with the Black community more directly, running seminars,
Good evening, Big.
doing more writing around Black issues.
Okay.
It's about community development, not spending all my time analyzing pathologies, but really looking at how we move forward. I believe there's a renaissance taking place.
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying this for about 15 years. There's a renaissance, you know, like a renewal. You know, there's a shift. There's a complete shift, and I think it really did. The catalyst of that was, you know, the killing of George Floyd. But it was happening before. It was happening before, but I think there was a shift, and there's a wave, and we need to ride that wave and take advantage of it. So I call it the Renaissance, and so I would like that as part of that. Can contribute to the upcoming, what do you got? You call the come up, yeah. The
Yes.
come upping of the Black or the African diaspora.
The
come upping of the African diaspora. And for, if I can, more Black on Black marriages, it doesn't mean that mixed marriages shouldn't happen. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that it's dangerous to have so few of our women in relationships. It's dangerous to have negative narratives about Black men and Black women, and we're looking for other people to sort us out. We should do what they did in Tulsa, shift our social arrangements towards each other, build relationships, marry, build our, Claude Anderson talks about financial lovemaking, build an economic base, leave legacies for our children. That's what I'm about. I have a dream that we need a Black global university, a Black global university. That's one of my other dreams. But yeah, so that I want to participate in the Renaissance, and I want to earn a living doing that.
There you go. Yeah. It's all a part of the vision and the dream. So yeah, we just gotta, combine together and work as one to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate this conversation. Yeah.
Part of it is coming on board and, addressing these issues and sharing your knowledge with us. So yes, we are all grateful for that, very much so. So guys, if you have any questions, please, by all means, leave them in the comments section, and we will ask Dr. Val before we close this out. So I just have one more question for you, Dr. Val, before we open it up for the Q&A session. And that question is, so knowing what you know now, so what advice would you have for those that are looking to start their own business for themselves? What would your words of encouragement and advice be to them?
Yeah, I think that it's really connected. It's about finding time to identify what your assignment is. Why am I on this planet?
Yes.
I think that would be the first thing, to really invest, times of meditation and prayer to identify. Once you make the decision, I want to find out what my goal is, because a lot of people go through life not knowing that they have a purpose. They just think, I'm here, it's just by chance, and I'm just here and I'll just shuffle along. But I think for those people who have a hint that they are here for a purpose, really invest time to identify what that purpose is. And it's usually something that will make you weep. It's usually something that will make you weep. You'll have a very strong emotion towards it, or make you angry. But these are indicators that this is something that you're meant to solve. You're meant to contribute in this area. Something you feel very passionate about.
Yes, absolutely. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your assignment is in there. Your business. If you want to go into business, connect it with the very thing that you feel passionate about, because there's so many aspects, as I'm learning, of doing a business that, it's like, I can't be bothered. You think, I just don't have the time for that. Horrible little detail things. But if it's connected with your assignment, then you've got the juice to sort of like process those things, right? But if it's something that you hate doing, and then you have aspects of your work, it's not going to last. You need that passion, and that passion that's what we need. We need passion to make it happen.
Yeah, that's going to be your driving force to keep you going through those tough times.
Through the tough times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. Yes, Doc. So yes, we thank you for that word there. So guys, like I said, if you have any questions, please post them in the comment section before we close out this interview session. And I'm just going to leave a link for any of you business owners and aspiring business owners. If you're looking to create some marketing strategies for yourself, to create more exposure, to get your name out there and present your offers, I'm going to leave a link to my webpage, and you can sign up for free training. You'll get a week's worth of training through that email, and it's going to be sharing different marketing tips with you guys to help you reach that target audience, or that specific audience that has already stated what it is that they are looking for. And then it's going to show you how to identify them and then put your offer in front of that specific audience. So I'm just going to leave the link in the comment section, and you can be sure and feel free to go ahead and get yourself a copy of that training. Okay, all right. So we got it here on YouTube and also shared out on Facebook. All right, Doc. So do you have any closing words before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I would encourage women listening to contact me, and my email is there. And if contact me quick. If there's something that you think I want to find out more, don't leave it too long, because you'll just drift into the pressures of life. Seize the opportunity and just email me. So I really encourage people to try and email me within the next 24 hours, just to say, I'd like to have a conversation or whatever, and we can, communicate. I think that I would like to encourage all the listeners to spend some time thinking about the importance of the power that we have in our hands, as individuals, but also as a community. And that we have the power to change the narrative about what it is to be Black in the world. It's up to us that, despite the systemic racism and white privilege, all the things that people are talking about, we're not having enough conversations about the power that we actually have and what is available to us. So I would encourage us to commit to empowering conversations and to solution-focused conversations where we're taking charge, because our children need to see us rise up with dignity. Yeah, so that, I think those would be my closing words. To single women, it matters to God that you're single, and we can do something about it.
Awesome, Doc. Awesome. Very good. Very well said. Yes, yes, yes. So, family, we are going to wrap it up with that. So if you have not already done so, please like and share this out so everybody else can witness and be a part of this conversation that we just had. Also, I want to encourage you guys to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It is scrolling at the bottom of the screen there. It's Rob McCray. Hold on, let me see it now. Yes, youtube.com/C/Rob McCray. So that is my YouTube channel. Please go over there, subscribe, click the like button, and become one of our valued members. And by all means, we're going to reach out to you, share some love, support, and just show you some different ways to get different exposure for yourself and within your business as well. Pastor Downer says, "You're doing it, Minister Rob McCray." Thank you so much, Pastor. I greatly appreciate you for your love and support all of the time. Thank you. Thank you. Blessings unto you. And my nephew, Antonio McCray, he is on vacation. I hope you're enjoying it out there, my brother. Good to see you. You got the wife and the family out there. So just want to give a shout out to you. So yes, we just want to thank each and every one of you. Got one more comment here. Mr. McCray and Dr. Bernard Allan, that's Wrath of Breath. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So yeah, guys, we just want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule busy schedule to tune in and watch us here on The Come Up. So be sure to tune in every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a different guests come on and they share their experiences and tell us about what they're doing within their business. So on behalf of Dr. Val Bernard Allan, this is Rob McCray for the Business Building Network. Thanking you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you real soon. Take care, everybody.